Some years ago, I ran in a half marathon along the Brooklyn waterfront. Now, I've done a fair amount of long distance running, so this wasn't necessarily a huge physical feat for me. It was honestly more just a way to focus on some other things, sort of a fun way to distract myself a little bit in the midst of making some other life decisions. Fun fact, the decision before me at this time had to do with an interview process that I was in with a church that I had never heard of before, called Hancock Church. So I decided to step up my usual running a bit to be ready for this race that I envisioned would be a lovely, serene, early spring run along the Hudson. When the air horn blew that morning to begin the race, all of us runners jockeyed for our spot, jostling in between each other, getting enough space to be able to run at our own endurance pace. Then we glided past the first marker that let us know that we had ticked off 2 miles of the run, only 11.1 to go. We proceeded along and the skies began to get grayer, and then the winds began to pick up. Before long, there were small white caps on what had previously been a rather calm Hudson River. We kept trotting along into a headwind, okay, no problem. And then some type of precipitation begins to fall from the sky. It wasn't rain, but it wasn't exactly snow. It was indeed some combination of all 4 types of precipitation falling at once: rain, snow, sleet, and the occasional hail. Now, this is all fine. It is, in fact, part of running. You dig deep, you take it all in, you feed off of the energy of the crowds that are faithfully cheering you on. But on this day, after running and waiting to pass the sign that would let me know I had run at least 4 miles, I kept thinking surely the marker would be around the next corner any second now. Just around the next corner any second now. And then what I quickly realized was that all of the mile marker signs had been blown away by the storm. Maybe I was at mile 4, or maybe it was mile 8, who knew? But there's something psychologically that happens in long distance running. Almost no matter how tired you are, no matter the weather conditions, if you can see that you only have a mile or 2 left, you can dig way down deep and pull out more energy to carry you over to the finish line. It's amazing. But when all the markers are gone, the reverse happens psychologically. Even though physically I was feeling okay, the disorientation from not knowing where I was on the course suddenly turned my legs to lead. Psychologically, it became a grind. I could have run only 5 miles, but it felt like 15. No matter what the conditions, the mile markers, it turns out, are everything. Well, it seems to me, friends, that the mile markers we thought we had in this ultramarathon that we did not sign up for, called a 100-year pandemic, it seems to me that these mile markers have been blown down. The storm might have had deceptively calmer moments, but it has not quelled, and we trod on. In March, when it became clear that everything in person would be shutting down, we were in a sprint mentality. By April, we had shifted to a marathon mentality. By May, we had moved into an ultra-marathon mentality. And now it seems to be more like a Tough Mudder obstacle course while wearing a weight vest ultra marathon. Any mile markers we thought we might have along the way have almost laughably been blown down. The storm continues, and the storm has suddenly crossed with another long brewing pressure system, the life and death matter of racism. which is the unshakable awareness that we can't unsee. The Black Lives Matter movement, according to the New York Times, is now the largest movement in all of our country's history. We are living in historic moment upon historic moment. Now, one storm is a pestilence that we will get through. Though the cost be great, we will one day raise our heads from this pandemic. But the other storm is long overdue, and it is a holy storm. It is a Pentecost kind of storm. And it's not something that we get through. It is something that moves through us and transforms us. To really see the depth and the breadth of the tentacles of racism in our country is an invitation to discipleship and growth. And it's a lot. It's a lot. Both of these tectonic shifting events together, we must admit, are a lot. So maybe it's the height of privilege to think about resting when there is indeed so much work to do. True. Certainly, if we are feeling weary and heavy burdened, then imagine what our Black and brown sisters and brothers are feeling. But there's an honest question that must be asked. How do we do this for the long haul? The storm of COVID has no more mile markers. We don't know where we are on the course towards a vaccine. Could be 2 months, could be 2 years. How do we sustain ourselves for the unknown? Intersecting with that question of how do we sustain ourselves for the work of anti-racism over the long haul? How do we, as a majority white congregation, not fizzle in our efforts? The truth is, no one can sprint forever, and even ultramarathoners have to rest. And so we are drawn to the words of Jesus' invitation as if to water every time we hear it. Come to me, all who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. And what we often miss is that Jesus pairs this invitation with his direct and unapologetic commissioning of his disciples, where he lays out the persecutions that they would endure, where they together face squarely the cost that they will pay. The reality of the storm upon storm of their day was set next to this beautiful imagery that all weary souls need. But Jesus here is not talking about taking a break from their mission. The mission was as much a part of him and of them as breathing. He's talking about a different kind of rest. He's talking here about doing the work from a deeper place, a place of faith, a place of flow. See, real rest is trusting God. The easy yoke that Jesus offers is not about freeing us from the work, but freeing us from our own self-reliance, from the belief that we have to do it all on our own. This invitation is about freeing us from the cycle of working until exhaustion over and over. Work that is focused primarily on achievement and productivity, until we collapse into vacation or habitually escape into numbing and mindless entertainment. See, that is the secular rhythm of life. Jesus here is talking about a sacred rhythm of life that includes Sabbath, where we are required to give up full self-reliance, where we cease to measure our value in terms of outcomes, and where we let the deep presence of God fill us up to do the purposeful, intentional work that we are called to do. In joining with the yoke that Jesus offers, we are invited to do the work that is ours to do from a place of empowerment. Being a disciple brings purpose to all that we do, so that what we carry is both lighter by the sharing of it and by the spirit in which it is done. that chilly, early spring day, as I somewhat leadenly made my way to the finish line of the stormy half marathon, I remembered something. I remembered what had happened the day I ran my very first half marathon many years ago. That day, as I anxiously ran, I was worried about passing everyone that I could and worried about making good time. An older and much more experienced runner gently strode up beside me. He looked at me, we were both still running, and he said, "Is this your first long race?" I could not believe that he would waste precious breath on talking in that moment, so I nodded yes. He smiled gently. "You're going to need to relax," he said. "Find your own pace and get into your groove. Don't worry about others passing you, and don't try to pass everyone you see. Just dig deep and find your flow." Now, this man, whose name I never learned, kept respectfully checking in on me throughout the race. And his sage words came back to me all those years later, and they became my mile marker along the way. I dug deep, and I found my flow, though the sleet pelted my face and though the winds raged. And you know what? I wasn't exhausted at the end of the race. I was, in a unique way, invigorated. So I carry this unnamed man and his wise words with me in every race I run to this day, as I try to find my sacred rhythm. "My yoke is easy and my burden is light," says Jesus. As we yoke with Jesus and the larger body of Christ, we become each other's mile markers. We may be on mile 2 or 8 or 20, who knows? No matter where we are or how far along, no matter our sense of disorientation, we are bolstered, we are carried by God and by one another. To rest like this is to find our flow. It is to let ourselves fall into the net of the family of God. It is a communion Sunday. Communion is an invitation back to a sacred rhythm of life. We are reminded each time that we partake, we are reminded of our place in the family of God. So as we prepare to move to the table, may the rest that Jesus offers you settle into your heart, into your bones, and into your soul in the sharing of the bread and the cup this morning. May you know that it is not all up to you. May you know that you are part of something so much larger, and that you are held in the net of love that is the family of God. May it be so.